Hello.
Hello. Hello, I'm on the road. I'm not in my normal habitat,
We're
which
both
was
we're both in
more,
Michigan, which is exciting.
that is exciting. Uh, it was more to set this up than I realized it would be in terms of there's no furniture in this particular room where my arm for the microphone can clamp. So we're kind of, I had to build a mousetrap here. So we're hoping that the whole microphone doesn't just give up at some point and fall on the floor.
Well, that could be exciting if it comes
Right.
crashing down. Okay,
Right.
and we also have a little bit of a delay. So if we sound chippy choppy, that is why, but we are plowing through. The topic we wanted to talk about today is angrily inspired by
Fueled.
Fueled by a kind of goofy article that just came out in the New York Times. It was in the Sunday, what was it, July 6th, the Sunday, July 6th issue of the New York Times. And it was all about, I forget the silly title of it, but it was all about brands hiring influencers in-house to create content. And I want to go on the record stating I like this trend. I think it's smart. Brands need an insane amount of content to be able to compete in today's world. They need content for multiple platforms. They need content for multiple purposes. For their owned content, they need content to be able to run in paid. They need to have content that meets every part of the sales funnel from awareness down to conversion, which we've talked about
and they need
endlessly.
and they need it in a certain time frame sometimes. Like it's not just where it's going, but how quickly, or the opportunities that pop up, the trends, the talking points that their consumers are sharing with them. So it's very quick turnaround too.
Right, right. So, yes, this is something that's happening. Yes, I think it's smart. Sounds like you do too. What
Mhm.
was kind of goofy, not kind of, what was super goofy about this New York Times article is that they kind of positioned it as they didn't come out and say death of influencers, but the implication was that brands are now bringing this in house. They will have their own influencers who work for them. And that means that they no longer need outside influencers to be sharing information about their content. And I get it. I get that we need clickbaity, link baity headlines. I get it that I probably would not have shared this and or opened up such a conversation on my LinkedIn if it was like this is happening and it's cool and it fits right in with the other stuff. Yay.
One
Like
paragraph.
that's right,
Right.
right. So I
Right.
get it. I get why it was positioned this way, but in the interest of just sharing my opinion, from my perspective, yes, I love this trend, but no, it doesn't speak to the death of anything. In fact, it speaks to why this is growing and so important. And lo fi content, which is like the term I'm hearing everywhere now. I saw you used it in a comment on LinkedIn this morning. Like that's not going anywhere and that's what's working online. And this is just brands kind of showing that they are all in on it. And it doesn't mean the death of anything. In fact, it underscores the importance and growth of what we're doing.
Yeah. And okay, so I don't know where to jump in here because let me just jump onto your comment there. It's also not new. If you look at the social media managers or now directors of social and influencer across the board at brands, I think there's a high percentage of those people that started out as influencers or creators or social media, aficionados or like people who are really active in social on their own. And so it makes sense for a brand to hire somebody who's native and fluent and now bring them in. So I don't even think this trend is new. I think what you've pointed out and what my post would have been about this is Dodoy. Everybody's talking about influencer and it's the money that's flowing into it. And Cannes Lion is 2 years now with the Creator Festival. So it is just a very hot, fun topic to write about. But below the surface, the content of that article, that super goofy article, wasn't new. It's not groundbreaking. Is part of a maturing industry, an indication of a maturing. It's like the other thing I'm seeing right now is how smart brands are to treat their influencer partners, whether in-house or external, as creative directors, as creative agencies. Again, we've been saying that for 5+ years, like that they are a economical package for all of the whole pipeline of creativity, not just influence, but the content, the images, the videos, the SEO, knowing how to post to social, all of that. I remember being at Creatorverse a couple years ago, and Denise, I'm going to mess up her last name. She did a whole video about how, and a
Denise
panel about
Vitola from Linkia.
Vitola. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
She did a whole panel on, or a speech on, are creators the next, are they killing the agency model? Because creators are the next agency. And now people, years later are getting credit, brands are getting credit for actually doing it. So I think it's that same, but most of all, it's clickbaity. Everybody's talking about influencer, everybody's talking about creator. And so what's our take on it? Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a
few
Harvard
thoughts.
Business Review magazine from maybe 2 years ago where the cover story was about influencer marketing. And I picked it up, like doing my due diligence, like, well, I probably should read what the Harvard Business Review says about influencer. I could not get through the opening paragraph because I could tell this is going to be so 3 years ago, like so basic, generic, that it kind of not just insulted me, but like kind of killed me. And that's what I feel about this article too. Like it's not just that it's super goofy, it's that this is the New York Times and now people are like, oh, rah, rah. It's not helpful. Like it's not moving us in the right, I don't think, not moving us in the right direction as far as what brands should be looking out for coming down the road. This is an old pattern. So sorry,
Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
Your monologue thoughts, deeply held thoughts, gave me so many things were going through my head. I actually, if you saw me looking down, I was writing notes because I was I don't want to forget my thoughts. The first one is, to your point, yes, brands have been doing this in one way or another for a while now. I think maybe one of the differences is in technology. Like, one, there's so much more content that's needed because there are more platforms out there. Two, brands can more easily take stuff like this in house because the equipment that you need is so much more affordable, it's easy, it's accessible. Everyone can record, everyone can edit. It's just, you don't bringing creating an in-house content studio 15 years ago was like a massive, humongous endeavor. Creating an in-house lo-fi, to use that term again, content studio now is a much simpler thing. Like you don't need this crazy editing bay, and you don't need like an entire like the size of the studio you need is smaller. Like this is just more accessible to brands.
So wait,
so from a technology perspective, it doesn't surprise me.
I think that's an interesting wrinkle that I'm not factoring in here. Let's define terms. When you say in-house, to me, I'm like, okay, that just means they're on call, they're on your payroll, they're employees, you have access to them. Are you saying, Danielle, that you believe that they're literally in like the office in a studio together?
Okay, so this is the crazy thing from this article. So, full disclosure, you said you haven't read it yet, and I said, don't worry, it'll be fine.
Here we go. First hiccup.
The one of the creators that they profiled, it actually seemed to me that she works for a number of brands part-time. For one of the brands that she works for, she had been creating content in her apartment. So like showing her kitchen and walking, I think it was like a home design type, like pillows and that sort of thing. I might be getting that wrong. Something along that vein. And she was starting to get recognized in New York, like on the subway, and things started getting a little bit creepy for her because her content has gone viral a number of times and people were recognizing her. So what they actually did at this brand is they created like a fake apartment at the office. So there's like a fake kitchen that looks like an apartment kitchen, and there's like a little living room. And so yes, like this creator is at their office creating content that looks like it's in a house.
Mm-hmm.
That was the other thing I wrote down, is that it's actually kind of inauthentic. Like she's she's coming up with the ideas and it's from her POV, but it's not even really a kitchen that she's
Don't try
standing
to
in
turn
if
on the
she's in the
water.
kitchen.
Non-potable. Don't drink it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
wait, don't you remember? Okay, we've talked about how Twitter parties were a thing when we started, but don't you remember when Instagram came on the scene? Creating Instagrammable like sets at events. When we hosted Eat Right Retreat, the food blogger conference in 2015 in Chicago, one of the spaces where we held a meal like, through a dinner with a brand hosting it was a loft that was set up to be Instagrammable. I mean, that was the term back then, right? To be, again, that's even still not new. It's just taking the concept and putting it in one location. So inauthentic, if depending on what you're trying for that content to be, yeah, it could be inauthentic, but it's also just not new. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody's thinking about how to make things Instagrammable or I don't
I
know,
mean, that
pretty.
whole question kind of gets to, so like I said, I did post about this on LinkedIn, and one of my clients, Noelle, who's awesome and who you have met from United Dairy of Michigan, she chimed in and her perspective was really interesting to me because I hadn't seen it this way. So, from her perspective, this type of content she feels is not as effective as true influencer content because it's still coming from the brand. So, even though they're using an influencer to create it, at the end of the day, it's still brand generated. And
Channels.
right. And it doesn't, there's an element of authenticity that's missing. And there's an element of, I'm a real person. And this is how, from her perspective, I know we've talked a lot about whether disclosure impacts engagement. And you and I point to the studies that it doesn't. I think we feel okay about that because in our world, we're not going to use an influencer who doesn't already have a relationship with the brand and doesn't truly like it. And that's where Noelle was coming from. So, like in her mind, the influencer content is more authentic because it's someone who truly does love the brand. They're not on the full time payroll, they're their own person. They really love it. Yes, they're getting paid, but it's because they really love it and they have a story to share. So
Right.
she felt like it was like she came at it from like a different and authentic angle that I thought was really interesting and I hadn't thought about when I read the article.
And it goes back to what you started with in terms of the pressure that brands are under to have to create content, to fuel these different channels and parts of the funnel and needs. So the in-house creator influencer team is still not scratching that itch of the influence piece. And I would add to what you said about external influencers. It's not just that they love the brand, they should be connecting the dots and creating value for their audience. That should be the number one driver. And then if the brand and messaging and product aligns, I believe they're always should be serving their audience with their content and with their suggestions or their recommendations. Whereas you bring influencers in-house, they are now on the payroll. They are serving the brand, and that's fine. But to Noelle's point, there is a big difference, and you need to have both, and you need to know where each fits in the ecosystem. And I wanted to add one thing about that in-house studio piece. Did you see that Walmart has retrofitted one of their retail spaces because commercial retail is now so expensive and not necessarily being utilized. So they've retrofitted one, and I feel like it's in Tennessee, into a creator studio. But it's for $70 an hour. Creators can go in and use all of their equipment and all that. And somebody was arguing, like, oh, that's so brilliant. I'm like, no, it isn't. I don't know of almost any creator that is saying to themselves, how can I spend money producing? Like if brands want to support them and pay the studio fees for the influencers to go in and do that, great. But even $70 an hour to me was like, who are you? Like Mr. Beast, fine, or upper echelons. I don't see that being a big driver for nano and micro folks who, to your point, can just pick up their phones and do it. You and I have home studios. I don't know. Have you seen that? And any thoughts about how that relates to the whole, like, let's create a studio for these folks like a brand doing it and making it accessible makes sense, but
Yeah.
Walmart doing it and charging creators seems out of line.
I'm trying to unpack it. I had not seen it. I think if any creator can use it for any content, I'm assuming they can use it for anything they want. It doesn't have to be Walmart
Oh
related.
yeah. No. It's a
Okay.
rental space. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for some verticals, like thinking like the food influencer world. Like I remember we used to run this conference called Bloggy Boot Camp, and I remember there a food blogger did a session on how to inexpensively set up your studio for food stuff, but it's still stuff you have to get. Like you need, she was talking about how you can order a marble slab to put the food on. You can, there are certain things that you can do to make it look better.
Right.
And whereas I know I was saying with the technology, it's gotten a lot more affordable to do all of this stuff. But at the same time, if you are just starting out, it could be nice to have that resource. Even you and I had talked about, because you're in Michigan now, and you said maybe you can make your way out to Ann Arbor. And I said, oh, there's a podcast studio here that we could rent out for the hour. So you're not sitting in my basement recording.
As tempting as that sounds.
With me. Yeah. So I think maybe, I don't know. And like, I love there's a new Amy Poehler podcast, which is highly recommended and super fun. Good hang. Like if you need want to just go for a walk listening to a podcast and laughing out loud, I recommend it. But she uses a studio that I believe is the same studio where Michelle Obama and her brother record their podcast, and they set up different like backdrops for it. So I don't know. There is if you're living in a tiny apartment, I think there's a world in which it could make sense.
I just didn't think that it was this brilliant like solution that people are really craving.
Yeah.
I think the brand having it in-house and having like the kitchen, living room, dining room fake set could be really interesting. And then you marry that to my favorite thing these days is this idea of a writer's room that brands are bringing in. Duolingo started it, and a friend on LinkedIn just started something. I think it's called like Shit Show Creative, and they're doing a writer's room that brands can tap into. It's not a brand's writer's room. So if you married that, I mean, brands as channels, brands as entertainment, entities, enterprises, I think is really interesting. So that could evolve into something. But again, we go back to Noelle's point of like, what are we trying to do with influencers? Are we trying to make entertainment series and franchises, or are we trying to reach consumers through people they already know, like, and trust? And what's the best way to do that? Is in-house it? Is outhouse? I don't think that's it. External.
Outsource.
Right, outsourcing it. So both, I think, yes, and I think both need to be part of the mix, can be part of the mix.
Yeah. I think probably one of the biggest issues with this article is that they use the term influencer, where probably the correct term here is creator. And they're hiring in-house creators to make lo-fi content because it performs well and it is a smart part of their marketing mix. If this in a kitchen that's not even her own and she's creating content like on payroll from the brand, I would argue that that's more in the creator realm than in the influencer realm. I think that's a very easy. I know that those two terms can be interchangeable a lot of times, and there's all this back and forth over when to use what do they mean, what are the different definitions. Like this article does a really good job of highlighting what a creator would be.
Could not agree more. And I held back saying that because I feel like I'm always like the one that's like, they're different and we can't confuse what they are. And I didn't want to like beat that drum again, but absolutely. Creators deliver cultural relevance to brands. And so it does not matter in my mind if it goes out on the brand channel or the creators channel or some other channel. It is about the brand and cultural relevance. It is not about the authenticity that an influencer collaboration provides access to an audience that has been developed and nurtured as part of community building for that brand. That's a whole different strategy. Maybe I'm glad we kind of came to this point because your background, my background, our expertise, our agencies that we have built up around this sometimes those articles, because there's a fluidity in terminology and because I think there's this acceptance that anybody can talk about and write about influencer marketing with ease. And I sit over here like trying to bite my tongue because that little distinction between creator and influencer is a big distinction. And so influencer marketing is strategic and it fuels all of the marketing line items you have in your mix in a way that creator marketing and content doesn't. I think that's a piece of the puzzle. And so I just wanted to take a moment to carve out that the reason I get so uppity about it is because I know the depths and the nuance and the care that you and I put into our programs and our client relationships and our success. It's more than just like, are we going to work with creators today? Or are we going to work with influencers? A deep dive that we go on with our brand clients.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up something separate from this article quickly before we close out. Something that some brands are kind of pulling in-house using employees that I think is brilliant, and I'd love to see more of them do. And this is what, when I pulled up that article, this is what I thought it was going to be about, but it wasn't. And there are a few examples of this. The one that's coming to mind is the most recent one I read about, which is Ulta. So Ulta, the beauty cosmetics store that I now have to enter with reading glasses because everything's written in tiny white font. I can't tell what I'm buying. Ulta.
On a curved bottle. You're like, shit. Right. Okay.
They have a new program where they are allowing the people who work at their stores to become influencers on behalf of Ulta. And they get paid extra for doing this because what they realized is that the people who work in their stores are experts on all of these products. Many of them are makeup artists, are hair stylists, are extremely talented at what they do, and they know the products and they know the store, and they are like for sure some of the very best spokespeople that you could ever ask for. And so they allow these employees to apply to become influencers on behalf of the brand, and they pay them extra for this outside and above whatever payment they're getting for working at the actual stores. That is so brilliant, so smart. I don't know why more brands aren't embarking on programs like these. Oh, you do? Pray tell.
Because it's brilliant, and it's a tremendous amount of logistics and oversight, setting up the payment structure, setting up the brand guidelines, what you can say, what you can't say. It is the same hurdles that we run through with sort of straight up traditional influencer marketing. I do think it's brilliant. And I do think brands are probably cognizant of, like, think if it's an insurance company or a pharma brand, makeup, beauty, of skincare maybe feels a little lower stakes in the sense of the training, but so that's what I would say is it's that piece. But it opens our eyes up to think about all the places. Willingness to look at employees in this way opens up, like, then, because I know I had the experience at during prom, not my prom, my daughter's prom, of going into Ulta to just get, I think it was foundation or concealer. And we're like like you said, I'm reading, and does this shade match? Finally, somebody came over who knew what she was doing, an Ulta employee. The whole process was so smooth and beautiful, and my daughter felt seen and supported and walked out with a product she loves and that works for her. If that woman who helped us said also, here, this is my Insta, like, follow me for other tips, for sure, at least my daughter would. I might too, because I felt so good about it. So it opens up these avenues of potential growth and connection with the consumer. So I agree with you. And again, sorry for the monologue. Yeah. Why do you think that more brands aren't doing it?
I think you're probably right. I think it's a lot. I guess I see it from my perspective, which, yes, you should be doing this. And yes, Sway Group can help you do this. Just call us. No problem at all. We can easily set up the payments. We could help vet them. We can distribute the brand guidelines, help set up a system for approval of all the content.
Yep.
No problemo. Do this every day.
Yes.
So, yeah, I guess that's why I don't understand why more aren't doing it, because that's what we do day in and day out. It doesn't matter if it's someone we found through our network or if it's someone they bring to us from their store, list of store employees. The actual process is exactly the same.
Yeah, and PS, they should come to you or our agency or any, if they want support, even before they have a list of employees. That's a place where we as experts can add insight into what does that process look like, so that, because we talked about this before, I think the Ulta one in particular, downstream challenge that comes up maybe with the brands carried at Ulta. If Drunk Elephant doesn't get the right coverage and Supergoop does, how is that going to play out? And we can help navigate some of the things they're not thinking about when they're planning this employee advocacy program from our years of experience working with brands outside of that type of a setup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good thinking. They absolutely should be calling you.
Agree.
Yeah.
Okay. This was fun. I'm glad we talked about it, even though you have not read the article, and you can now go to my LinkedIn. And oh no, I didn't even link to it because LinkedIn doesn't like links, ironically. So I just said, go find this article.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, I did see that, and I loved your coverage on it, and I just gave up. I was like, I've seen it a couple places, and obviously it's just going to irritate me. So we'll see if I have the bandwidth today to tackle that emotional challenge.
It wasn't terribly irritating. I've read worse, if that helps.
Well, it was a good conversation.
Yes, thank you. And more next week.
See you then.